Hi, so here I have built a chatbot using the Watson conversation tool, and I've had a lot of fun building it. My brief is going to be the same. I am going to look for a backpack PNG image, and I have built this entire system without code through this tool. So typically, this is how the dialogue looks like. First, I have defined my intents. The intent over here is search. So if I go into search, you can see that my intent name is search, and I have added some user examples here, like I'm looking for all images or I need backpack images. And then I will get into my entities. Entities means, let's say I am looking for an image with a particular search facet that I want to define it with. For example, an image that I've added recently, or for a particular file size, or whether it was modified, or it was a particular type of image, like it's a PNG or a JPEG, etc. So if I go into an expanded value of an entity, here the entity name is added, and I can add my entity values, like whether the image asset was added in the last few hours. There's a very interesting thing called patterns where I can give variation of the entity value as last few hours. That means I can add something like last few hours or added in the last few hours, or even write hours as HRS. Added in the last month can also be a possibility of a value, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple entities that I have defined. I have defined the file size, what should be the largest, and I have defined this as 1000 MB, for example, and the smallest can be 300 MB, so on and so forth. And finally, I come to my dialogue, which is the actual conversation that is happening. The dialogue for search has essentially four sections. One is the welcome section, the second one is all the entities that I have defined, and finally, anything else which denotes the trigger for what the bot is not understanding. So if I go into my welcome node, I can see if the bot recognizes welcome. It can respond with, "Hello, I am Jeeves, your EM Assets Assistant. How can I help you?" That is basically your welcome message that it will greet the user with. And let's get into my intent, which is my search intent. So if a user inputs that I am looking for backpack images, then it will respond with, "Sure, I would be glad to help, and are you looking for a particular file type?" And it will lead the conversation that way. And let's say the user inputs that I only want images that were added recently, so it can respond. The bot will respond with, "Relax while I hunt your recently added images," and it will show up my recently added images. And if, let's say, the user wants to hunt for a PNG, which is the brief right now, so you can see that I have added a type as PNG, and it can respond with, "Thanks. If you want a PNG, I'm looking through all the backpack PNG images. Relax as I hunt for your images." And finally, if the bot doesn't understand a query or a trigger that the user inputs, so this is a category called anything else, the bot will then respond to clarify the trigger better, like, "I didn't understand. Can you try rephrasing the statement?" So now I will give the demo of the chatbot that I've built completely without code using Watson conversation tool. So here I put in my entry. Let's say I need backpack images. And what the bot did was it has identified the intent as search. So it responds back, "Sure, would be glad to help. Here are all your backpack images. Is there a particular file type you're looking at? PNG or JPEGs, or generally all images?" So basically, it has identified an intent as search. If I type in something like PNG sounds good, and what it does is it identifies the entity as type. So it says at the rate type PNG. So entities are always defined with an at the rate sign, and intent is defined with a hashtag sign when you're defining your intents and entities. And what the bot does is it responds with thanks, looking through all your backpack PNG images. Meanwhile, if you want, can you help me with a time frame? Alright, I want images that were added recently. And I put in my query as a user, and again, my conversation tool and this amazing chatbot understands the entity as added recently. And you can see the note gets highlighted here as well because it's taking out the response. And it says, relax while I hunt your recently added images. And it will all give me all my recently added images, which are PNG. And what if I make a query like large size images? So if I say I want large sized images, let's see what happens. So sometimes what happens is if it can't understand a query, it can go into anything else and start throwing you error responses. So as the bot learns, as you feed it data and as you feed it a lot of interesting conversations and accurate conversations, the chatbot will self-learn and become better and better, and almost like a friend you're talking to who will help you search in practically minutes. And you don't have to understand interfaces and buttons all over from scratch because it's like you are messaging your friend or you're talking to your friend. Thank you for listening to this demo.